After Hillary Clinton gave an interview in which she called some Trump supporters cultists who need to be deprogrammed, the Fox propaganda network clutched its pearls in protest, and deranged MAGA Republican Congresswoman Paulina Luna said that we should use the powers of Congress to investigate Hillary Clinton, a private citizen. But before we unpack all that, if you haven't yet, please hit that like, subscribe, and the alert bell. Maybe check out my Patreon. I'd appreciate the support. All right, folks, so we're going to play a couple of clips here. We're going to start with this part of the interview between former Secretary of State Hillary Clinton on CNN, in which she mentions Trump supporters being in a cult.
Extremists take their marching orders from Donald Trump, who has no credibility left by any measure. He's only in it for himself. He's now defending himself in civil actions and criminal actions. And when do they break with him? Because at some point, maybe there needs to be a formal deprogramming of the cult members, but something needs to happen.
Okay. So, definitely people on the right, but even many people on the left were not happy with Secretary Clinton's word choice because they found it unnecessarily divisive. I actually don't, because it is true that MAGA Republicans are indeed in a cult, and we shouldn't mince words anymore, especially if facts don't care about your feelings, gang. It is a fact. Now, in response to this, Paulina Luna, who is a sitting Republican congresswoman from Florida, she is she is aligned with the MAGA part of the Republican Party. This is what she had to say. This woman is calling for deprogramming of Trump cult members a few days after the FBI created a watch list for Trump voters ahead of 2024. More on that in a minute. This is really vile and dangerous rhetoric. It needs to be investigated by House oversight. Interesting. So, just to give some quick context here, this was a story that was broken by Newsweek, and of course she's misrepresenting it. She said Newsweek said, the federal government believes that the threat of violence and major civil disturbances around the 2024 U.S. presidential election is so great that it's quietly created a new category of extremists that it seeks to track and counter, Donald Trump's army of MAGA followers. The challenge for the FBI, the primary federal agency charged with law enforcement, is to pursue and prevent what it calls domestic terrorism without direct reference to political parties or affiliations, even though the vast majority of its current anti-government investigations are of Trump supporters, according to classified data obtained by Newsweek. The FBI is in an almost impossible position, says a current FBI official who requested anonymity to discuss the internal matters. The official said that the FBI is intent on stopping domestic terrorism and any repeat of the January 6th insurrection, but the Bureau must also preserve the constitutional right of all Americans to campaign, speak freely, and protest the government. By focusing on former President Trump and his MAGA supporters, the official said, the Bureau runs the risk of provoking the very anti-government activists that the terrorism agencies hope to counter. Sorry, that was a clumsy sentence. Especially at a time when the White House is facing congressional Republican opposition claiming that the administration has weaponized the Bureau against the right wing. It has to tread carefully. Now listen, no doubt that the government has to tread very, very carefully. But again, facts don't care about your feelings. That's what Ben Shapiro tells us. And we've discussed this in video after video after video. It is simply a fact that right-wing extremism and right-wing political violence is considerably more frequent and more excessive in terms of the violence associated with it than left-wing extremism. And what Paulina Luna wants is the FBI to actually put its thumb on the scale. So when they're investigating things and they see a disproportionate amount of violence coming from one side, she wants the FBI to ignore that fact. And if they don't, then she says, well, you're being politically biased. Not necessarily the case, as it could just simply be a case that they're following the facts, and the facts tend to aggregate more on one side because, of course, we don't live under some sort of divine cosmic moral law which dictates that everybody is equally good or equally bad. The data reflects that right-wingers tend to be more violent and more extreme. That's simply a fact. She doesn't like it. She finds it inconvenient. In which case, I would suggest that she use her position as a Republican congresswoman, a leader, somebody wielding state power, somebody who wields influence within the GOP, to de-radicalize the GOP, make them less violent, and then they would be less likely to be targeted by the FBI. But having said that, what I find interesting is she says that, and of course she fudges the facts, she fudges the information. She says the FBI is targeting Trump supporters. No, the FBI is targeting, political extremists and people who are violent, and they just so happen to more likely be Trump supporters than not. Again, that's your fault, not the FBI's. But Hillary Clinton's a private citizen. She's not in the FBI. She's not running for office. And yet Anna Paulina Luna, a government official, wants Congress, a branch of government, to investigate a private citizen? Why? Simply because she said the fact that many Trump supporters are in a cult and they should be deprogrammed? Really? Is that the basis? This is vile and dangerous rhetoric, she says. But what about Trump's vile and dangerous rhetoric? He's actually in the political process. He was the president of the United States, a higher position than Hillary Clinton ever had, and he's trying to become the president again. And he's the leader of your party. Why is Hillary Clinton being held to a higher standard of ethics than Donald Trump? There's no rational basis for that. He should be held to an infinitely higher standard because she's a private citizen who is effectively retired from politics. But that's not how the Republican Party works. They want to grade everybody on a curve. See, this is what they do with Hunter Biden, for example. Hunter Biden, President Biden's private citizen son, who's never been in office, who's never held government positions or power, has been investigated, not just by the executive branch under Barack Obama for tax liability, then under the Trump administration, then even under his own father's administration, but also by Republicans in the Senate in 2019, 2020, and now again by Republicans in Congress. So Republicans hold Hunter Biden to an infinitely higher standard than somebody like Jared Kushner, who was a government agent, Donald Trump's son-in-law, who wielded state power, who engaged in probable acts of corruption based on the evidence we do have, certainly a basis for an investigation. It's insane, folks. They don't care about consistency. They don't care about principle. They want to cut their side a blank check to do or say whatever with impunity. But if private citizens like Hillary Clinton and Hunter Biden, well, they need to be scrutinized. They need to be held to the highest possible standard. And if at first you don't succeed, if you don't find enough on them, you just keep investigating. It's absolutely deranged. I was going to play a clip from the Fox Propaganda Network as they clutch their pearls over Hillary Clinton's words, but instead I'm just going to read this part here. What I don't understand, this is from Tommy Lauren, a right-wing commentator, is why the Democratic Party is allowing her to speak on behalf of the Democratic Party. It does nothing for them. They're not. She has no position within the Democratic Party. She may vote Democrat, but she's not running for office. She doesn't hold office. She's just a prominent private citizen who gave an interview to CNN. She's not speaking on behalf of the DNC. But as Mehdi Hassan points out, Hillary Clinton last ran for president for the Dems 7 years ago. The guy who ran for the GOP in 2016, 2020, and almost certainly in 2024 is echoing Hitler in his rhetoric, making violent threats, and on multiple trials. But not a word from these Fox folks about any of that. Again, shamelessness is their superpower. They absolutely do not care. They want the asymmetry of expectations. They not only want to preserve it, they want to make it worse. They want to make it so much worse. We can't let them do that. We have to absolutely reject it. We need to refute it and mock it and belittle it. And then when we have power, ruthlessly hold Republicans to the same standards that they want to hold Democrats. We're not going to play this double standard game. We're not going to grade you on a curve. We're not going to, basically allow you all to get a leg up simply because you're too incompetent and too unpopular to win the game of politics and electoralism on your own merits. You need to step up your game. We're going to hold people like Donald Trump and Jared Kushner to a much higher standard, an infinitely higher standard than Hunter Biden and now private citizen Hillary Clinton. Because again, they wielded state power during the course of their misconduct, and in the case of Donald Trump, he's trying to do it again. We're not even going to say that they should be held to the same standard. Hunter Biden and Jared Kushner should not be held to the same standard. Jared Kushner should be held to a higher standard. Donald Trump should be held to a higher standard than Hillary Clinton right now. The only person who should be held to the same standard as Donald Trump is President Biden, because he is the sitting president of the United States. So anyway, we need to reclaim the narrative. We need to reclaim the set of standards. We need to ruthlessly and consistently force these institutions to say, stop grading Republicans on a curve. Stop holding Democrats to the highest possible standard. It should be absolute symmetry. And the only times that we deviate should be for substantive reasons. If we're going to hold somebody to a higher standard than somebody else, it shouldn't be based on political affiliation, Republican or Democrat. It should be based on power. You should hold somebody wielding power, Republican or Democrat, to a higher standard than a private citizen. It's that simple.